Now, for the latest in this development, we cross live now to our reporter Samkele Maseko, who is on the ground for us. Samkele, good afternoon to you. Now, of course, we know that earlier this morning, in fact, PTT, the ANC's PTT, Lulama Nkaitobi, declaring, of course, that some of the irregularities, some of the concerns that were there yesterday and this morning, those have been, resolved. The provincial conference is in full swing. But of course, there is this court case, this urgent court application. What are the implications now?
Essentially, that urgent court application of Dr. Rubusana Region is currently underway. They essentially want odd 20 branches that they say were fraudulently sitting not to be able to vote with their delegates at this provincial conference. You have seen the conference being opened by the national chairperson of the ANC, Cape ANC, calling on the delegates here to unite, calling on the leaders of the Eastern Cape to sit and discuss amongst one another in order not to further fracture the organization, and saying that if the ANC in the Eastern Cape is divided in this provincial conference, then the renewal of the ANC is pretty much thrown out the window. But I'm going to bring in Ayongezwa Lungisa, who is a branch delegate to the specific conference. Mr. Lungisa, just the essence of Dr. Rubusana Region going to court, allegations of branches sitting fraudulently and those delegates not being able to participate in the specific conference. What were the problems in the branch general meetings in some of the regions, and if there were any branch problems in the region where you come from when it came to the nomination and branch meetings?
Well, thank you, Sam. Let's greet you and the viewers at home. We have the ANC as a democratic organization. Therefore, when people are dissatisfied with internal processes within the ANC, they've got a right to ask for a court of law, because it is in the constitution of this country that we are elevating a court to be an institution that is above everything, even the constitution of the ANC. But it's quite unfortunate that we have people who are going to court, largely because they have not been given an opportunity within. And when they were given an opportunity, at some instances, we felt that the leadership, particularly the PTT, is factionally induced. How they look at things in most instances is on the basis that they want to be elected. Therefore, they can't be objective on those matters. If I would get closer to what is happening in Dr. Rubusana. In Dr. Rubusana, there was a court ruling that the branches that were convened in February and in March, all internal process should be concluded. But unfortunately, even before those internal processes were concluded, we had people convening those meetings, alleging that others are convened. We would know in Dr. Rubusana we had instances where there were allegations of people who are said to have participated in the branch general meetings, and those people unfortunately were deceased. May their souls rest in peace. But that's what happened. In some instances we had people that are alleged to be in jail, but they are said to have participated in those general meetings. That's why we thought that the decision that was given by the court was actually the correct decision. Going back to Krisani, that's where the problem is. And we have problems that the PDRC and the NDRC would have brought verdicts, but those verdicts have not been adhered to the point that those branches are here registered. To bring you something practical, Ward 15 in Insekayetu, in a date they were told that they must reconvene at the branch general meetings, because that which is said to have been convened was convened incorrectly. But such a branch did not do so. It came here and it is given the same status as us, as people who have done everything. Within those matters, must be resolved in the credentials, and of which, if they can't be resolved, we will have nowhere else to go but to approach courts of law, because they must help us where we feel that the comrades that are supposed to be resolving those matters are not resolved. But what we are happy about is that the conference so far is going well. It's a peaceful conference, and it does not appear as though it will be a conference that will end in a manner that is undesired of the ANC. But we request that the leadership, at least, even if they happen to be elected, but they must consider that the ANC would come first and anything else is secondary. But the ANC is the organization, and one thing that we are doing here, and we're happy about the speakers who spoke before, is that as we are arriving here, we must leave with the ANC that is more stronger than it would have been, because it is the Eastern Cape that would do renewal more than anything, or rather any other province that could do.
Mr. Lungisa, the national chairperson spoke about leaders of the ANC coming together, discussing, in essence saying there must be a unity slate. What are the perspectives, particularly from yourself, who supports Baba Loma Tigizela and his collective?
Look, the process coming here is not a process that would just be concluded inside. The provincial conference is a product of a process. When you're saying we must just merge slates, it's a bit late. We are coming from branches. Branch general meetings would have had views on matters. But more than that thing, if you talk about Baba Loma Tigizela, is a man that we think for now would be able to help us. Look, we are a province that is constantly is a labor sending province to Gauteng, Northwest or Western Cape. But we think that the work that he would have done, particularly during the COVID time, how he has led his department to convert the province to be a construction site, is something we think that if he's given more responsibility to drive what the ANC should be doing, we'll be doing much better than we are currently doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ilungisa, a delegate from the Chris Hani region. At a time where it's facing a number of officers. I'm just going to move to the back as we go inside Plenary, just to show you the delegates that have gathered here at this provincial conference, which may now be at risk on the Dr Rubusana Region on the virtue of some of the delegates and the branch general meetings. They are saying that those branch general meetings took place fraudulently. As you can see, this is the plenary of the conference of the African National Congress in the Eastern Cape, with the delegates singing and pointing those two second-term signs in support of Oscar Mabuyane, the provincial chairperson of the ANC in the Eastern Cape, who was dissolved by the NEC on the virtue of the PTT, his lifespan having been expired. But you've also got other regions like Alfred Nzo region, which is not supporting Oscar Mabuyane, which is supporting Baba Loma Tigizela. As you can see, this branch delegate from the ANC Youth League here making those change signs. As you also can see, some of them who are standing on chairs with the second term signs for Oscar Mabuyane, with the t-shirt of former ANC Youth League Secretary General Sindiso Makaka. But there is also others whom are pointing change signs. As you can see, the conference plenary is in essence singing songs that are divisive and showing their support for their preferred candidates, and in essence sets down the tone for what will happen at this provincial conference. Mantashe, the national chairperson of the ANC, saying when they leave this plenary, they must make sure that they are not divided, that they are united and can foster and take the province to greater heights that it's not been in a very long time. You remember, they had a very divisive 2017 provincial conference here at the ICC, where it was the festival of chairs. But interestingly, as they sing these songs, pro Mabuyane, pro Matigizela, very little has been spoken about policy direction. Very few words have been said and proposals have been put forward on the issues of oil and gas exploration, which Mantashe, the national chairperson of the ANC, has implored with the delegates here to make sure that they support that oil and gas exploration in the province, particularly within the Wild Coast area. Then you've got issues particularly pertaining to land issues, which is being raised by branches of the ANC and the national leadership on issues of land expropriation without compensation, saying that these conferences must not only be about electing leaders, but also about the policy perspective of the ANC. As we wrap up this broadcast, we're just going to go to the leaders of the ANC and speak to them whom are on the podium, just to hear their perspectives on how they see this provincial conference going. You can see, I'm just going to try and bring in Mr. Mini here, Mr. Figilatis, just yes, the future of the province of the Eastern Cape. Your national chairperson, Mr. Mantashe, said this must not be a conference of electing leaders. You must unite one another. How far are you in uniting yourselves? As you can see, plenary is heavily divided.
At this point in time, akukabonakali sign ze-divisions except ukucelebrate kwenkomfa eqalayo. Always ke inkomfa iqala ngola hlobo. The only time that is going to determine the unity is when kusenziwa i-credentials and then the conference is starting. After kwenziwe i-messages of support, always inkomfa iba lo hlobo kodwa ungancami wena uzawubona.
When are you going to do the credentials? Because you've now been taken to court on Dr. Rubusana Region.
Yes, sivile loo nto, but ayikazi official apha kwinkomfa. Xa ithe yeza law information, it is then that the conference is going to take a decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Figeletis. As you can see, some of the PTT members who are on the podium who are going to try and grab Ms. Stella Abrahams on their particular perspective, particularly Mrs. Abrahams. Your conference is sitting. You can see delegates, some are singing pro Mabuya and pro Matigizela. How are you going to unite yourselves with the court application now in court?
Well, the court application that we hear about, we have not received it yet. But anyway, our lawyers are ready to deal with anything. That's why we delayed all the processes, was we wanted to make sure that all steps are followed, due processes, and all members of the ANC that have grievances are heard. And upon the structures that are responsible for dispute resolution and adoption of particular things, that has happened. We are now awaiting a report from the Credentials Committee and will come and proceed with our conference. We do anticipate at times, it happens all the time, that people go to court. But our responsibility is to make sure that everything goes according to the Constitution. And that's the only responsibility we have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stella Abrahams. On this side, that is the Alfred Nzo region, the home region of Babalo Matigizela, whom are making the change signs, particularly for this provincial conference and for him to come in as provincial chair. This is the biggest region, the R Tambo region. At the back, you've got Amatole region, which is the home region of aspirant provincial treasurer. You can just take this natural sound. That was the conference of the ANC in the Eastern Cape. Some saying booyah, some saying go, some saying come in, Babalo Matigizela or Oscar Mabuyane, come back.
All right, of course, all eyes on this conference, the 9th ANC provincial conference in the Eastern Cape. Our reporters on the ground there, that was Samkele and Maseko, just giving us the scenes of what is actually happening inside. But our reporter Abongile Jantjies is also standing by to give us what is happening on his side. Of course, the singing that has been called to action earlier this afternoon, when the national chairperson of the ANC actually spoke out, saying that the party really now needs to start discussing unity and show unity in the Eastern Cape, because this has great bearing on the national, unity in the ANC. Of course, we leave Samkele Maseko, who is in a very, very busy and robust plenary session. The conference has not started, as we've heard, but we'll go now to Abongile Jantjies. Abongile, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, tell us where you are currently in reference to where Samkele is. I mean, earlier we spoke to you and you spoke to the representatives who have lodged those court papers, that will be heard later this afternoon. At the time we spoke to you, the leadership had not heard about the court application as yet, but as we've heard from Samkele's crossing, they are now on top of it. They understand that this court case is currently ongoing. They are not worried about it, said Stella Ndabeni, and in fact said that the issues will be discussed once they start to discuss the credentials and get into the conference. What are you hearing at this point in time? All right, we seem to have lost Abongile Jantjies, but we are definitely giving you rolling coverage of this conference. It hasn't officially kicked off yet, as you've seen there with the singing and, factions in the Eastern Cape always being the problem. But let's see if we've got him back. Abongile, can you hear me now?
1, 2, 3.
Abongile, can you hear me now? We've seen singing in the plenary. The conference has not officially kicked off yet. I mean, just moments ago, the national ANC chairperson, Gwede Mantashe, was addressing members, calling for unity in the Eastern Cape. What are you hearing and seeing where you are?
Well, Unati, I can safely tell you that the people who lodged this application are confident of their case. They are saying that they are willing to use their last bit of sense to ensure that the ANC is governed well. We just saw Nomvula Nonkonyane, the NEC member and head of organizing, making her way into a room not too far from me. He was met by Senzo Mchunu, also NEC member, and Dr. Aaron Motwaledi. When we tried to ask them for an interview about the matter, they're saying that it's something that they are bound to discuss now. They are saying that they are taking this seriously, and that they can't afford to have an Eastern Cape conference collapsing. You'd remember that it's been postponed a number of times. They are saying that after 5, things will probably get back to return, so that if these 30 delegates or branch members get recused, the court may continue. They are saying that they've encouraged that members should not run to court and rather solve their matters within the party. Well, there's a lot of singing from where we are. If my colleague Vuyoka Zifunani could show you the entrance of the ICC, these are some of the supporters who are not delegates but have made their way to East London to sing for who they are supporting and who they will be supporting ahead of this conference. Now that it's been brought to a halt, they are continuing with their singing, and that they are also waiting for 5 o'clock, where we'll also be heading to the East London High Court to hear the judgment. But it depends what the judgment says and who will be at detriment with regard to that judgment, Unati. But conference, they are saying that must continue. It's been postponed a number of times. It must continue, and new leaders must be elected in this conference, whether it be Oscar Mabuyane or Babalo Matikezela or Mlibo Kobushiane, who say they also want this party to be united and be renewed. They're all singing that same tune. It remains to be seen, Unati.
Talked about, those that are in support of Oscar Mabuyane and those that are then in support of Babalo Matikizela. What have you heard from Mlibo Kobushiane's supporters? Because when speaking to one analyst, they said that Mlibo being there could just be a phase and not necessarily him being, in the forefront and being in the running for the chairpersonship position. And I mean, just listening to people calling out names in that plenary, his name doesn't seem to feature enough. Have you spoken to some of his supporters, and are they there in their numbers?
Well, honestly, we didn't speak to any of his supporters, but when we spoke to him earlier on this morning, he says that they slept late at night yesterday trying to be consolidated. He was saying that his people, his supporters whom are behind him, they were trying to convince him which side to go to, between Matikizela or Mabuyane, where he says that he is set to make that announcement today, but we haven't had a chance due to the events that have been unraveling here at this conference. But Mlibo Kobushiane could be a kingmaker if these numbers are even, Unati. So if he brings his members, then it boosts some of whichever faction that he supports, Unati. But Mlibo Kobushiane, he says that he's ready to govern the province. When we interviewed him even before the conference, he said he's ready to govern the province, and he has done his groundwork on what he brings to the table, and that it would be clean governance and a corruption-free government. And then ANC that could be credible. And he says that going forward, this conference would create leaders who would be well recognized at a national level, Unathi.
Before I let you go, Abongile, I mean, I'm just looking at the time. It's 15:25. We're singing in the plenary still. No formal discussions have taken place. There is that looming court case at 5 o'clock where you are, standing and just from your observations, do you think that matters will actually get underway before 5 o'clock?
Not at all, Unathi. The court judgment is the kingmaker from now, because these 30 delegates that are supposed to be recusing themselves are believed to be on the side of Oscar Mabuyane. And then that's a detriment to his numbers coming into this conference. So should it not take place, we'll hear from the court judgment. The East London High Court is not too far from here, so by the time we come back from court, they would have known what the verdict or the judgment. But we might go late into the night. Even in 2017, with nominations were only made at around 9 o'clock. So these delays are not something new with regards to the provincial conference of the ANC here in the Eastern Cape.
Abongile, let's leave you for now. We'll definitely touch base with you not too long from now, because we really want to see when those proceedings will actually happen. Abongile, Jantjies and Samkele Maseko right there in the Eastern Cape where the action is. Of course, we are watching this conference very